Well, as the impeachment inquiry into President Trump ramps up, members of Congress have been hearing from their constituents back home and explaining their positions at town halls.
I will support and I will defend the United States Constitution.
Yes, ma'am.
And it is for that reason that I intend to fully support this impeachment inquiry and follow the facts.
This inquiry, we can't prejudge here, and we actually have to make sure we let the process run its course. That's what I talked about today. I think that's very important, and a lot of my constituents, what I've heard from them is they agree with me.
The president has absolutely abused his powers. I don't care who the heck is sitting in that Oval Office and what letter is behind their name. You put our country in jeopardy the minute you negotiate with a foreign entity.
My colleagues on the other side of the aisle have become so focused on one thing, and that is undoing the election of 2016.
Politico followed Illinois Democrat Sean Casten through 6 town halls on Saturday. Casten represents Illinois' 6th congressional district, which he actually flipped from red to blue last year. Before that, the district was held by Republicans for 45 years. Andrew Desiderio is a congressional reporter for Politico and the author of that story. He joins me now from Capitol Hill. Boy, what a whirlwind to have to sit through all those town halls this weekend.
Yeah.
So, Democrats have signaled that they're encouraged, right, by the polling that shows this support for an impeachment inquiry. But back home, does it resonate with voters, Andrew?
Well, that's a good question. It certainly resonates in the more blue districts around the country, but this one, as you mentioned, is one that had been represented by Republicans for almost 5 decades before Congressman Casten, of course, flipped it last year. This district was represented by Henry Hyde, who represented it from 1972 until 2007, and then Peter Roskam, who was in for around 6 terms before he was defeated last year by Congressman Casten. But Congressman Casten's argument here is that, look, we haven't been out there as a party sort of trying to move the polls closer toward supporting impeachment of the president. And that was sort of the case he was making in referencing sort of these recent polls that have shown that 58% of Americans now support the impeachment inquiry that Democrats have launched. Before it was launched a few weeks ago, obviously, that number was down below in the 30s. So that was kind of a vindication of what he thought his strategy was, which was to essentially try to educate the public about this and to have a united front on it as a party.
So there's a recent Monmouth poll that shows that 43% of voters believe President Trump's corruption claims against Joe Biden. How do Democrats like Sean Casten's counter that narrative in these districts that, like his, have leaned red for so many decades?
That's right. He actually had to confront a bunch of constituents who in turn confronted him about a lot of these claims that the president and, of course, Rudy Giuliani and some of the president's allies have lodged against Joe Biden regarding, this Ukraine issue. He essentially was unapologetic in saying, look, there is no there on the Biden story. And he told some voters, he said, look, I'm sorry that you have heard that, but it is just not true about Joe Biden. And it's an interesting case study for these frontline members in these districts that, as you mentioned, were flipped from red to blue in 2018, and it will be really tough for them to hold on to it again in 2020. And Congressman Casten is sort of an interesting case study and someone who is not just he's not tiptoeing around this issue like some frontliners are. He's leaning into it and leaning into it forcefully.
And after Democrats won the House in 2018, there was some sense that maybe Republicans need to move more toward not the center, but not so extreme. Is there a concern now with this impeachment inquiry picking up that they need to sort of recalibrate as well?
I don't think we're at that point just yet. I mean, I think we could get there the more information gets uncovered as a result of House Democrats' impeachment inquiry. But what Republicans are really focusing on, as you guys were discussing in the last segment with Nancy and the others, are these process violations that the White House views as untenable and illegitimate and unconstitutional and things like that. They're not focusing on the substance of what has been, lodged against the president in terms of the accusations of him abusing his power to try to solicit foreign interference to dig up dirt on his political rivals. So we're not at that point yet, but we could very well get to that point very soon. We're on recess right now on Capitol Hill, but lawmakers are coming back next week, and they got 3 straight weeks in session here, and that dynamic could change rapidly.
And since we've been focusing, so much oxygen is sucked up by this impeachment inquiry and talks of impeachment. back home, are voters worried? Are they concerned that we're not talking about health care, immigration, that has really taken a backseat?
So at all 6 of those town halls that I went to on Saturday in suburban Chicago, impeachment was definitely the dominant topic, and impeachment and the surrounding issues, right, with Ukraine and the Mueller report and other things that could be factored into this. But a lot of voters did voice skepticism about what Democrats are pursuing, particularly the more conservative voters who tried to confront Congressman Casten about his posture on impeachment. But, you know, obviously issues like health care and gun control and Social Security and climate change and all of that came up at these town halls, and voters haven't really forgotten about those issues, and they don't want their members of Congress to put those issues on the sidelines while they pursue impeachment. Of course, Democrats have been saying this entire time that they can walk and chew gum at the same time in terms of pursuing impeachment while also trying to address these issues that they ran and won on in 2018. But the White House doesn't seem willing to be engaged with House Democrats on these issues, particularly with the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement, which seems stalled right now, gun control, which seems stalled right now. It seems like everything is taking a back seat while impeachment is the dominant story here on the Hill.
Andrew Desiderio, thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us.
Thanks, Rena.